So today, as we mentioned earlier, we are fortunate to welcome Claude AnShin Thomas to lead our meditation.
First thing, and I think the most important thing, I communicate this to all the groups I interact with, all the people that I interact with, is that meditation and daily life are not two things. Meditation really can't be taught. Meditation is an experiential process. It is not an intellectual or didactic process. It is our ideas of meditation that prevent us from discovering or experiencing the truth of it. Every action that we do, the focus of our life becomes an act of meditation if we bring that disciplined focus to it. So the root in Buddhist practice of an active meditation is sitting. So what I'll do is I'll give you instructions into sitting meditation as they've been passed on to me and as I pass them on to others. And then we'll sit together for 10 cycles of breath. It doesn't matter how long you sit or how short you sit. It matters that we sit. So what I encourage people to do is the first thing in the morning, before anything, is we get up, we make our bed like we never slept, and then we sit for 5 minutes. Then in the evening, before we retire, we unmake that bed, and then we repeat the process. We sit for 5 minutes. To establish that pattern, do it every day for 30 days. To establish that pattern. When sitting, there is nothing to be accomplished. There's nothing to be gained. So when sitting, posture becomes important. Doesn't matter if you sit on a chair or on a meditation cushion. Doesn't matter if you sit on the edge of your bed, on your sofa, or if you sit directly on the floor. What we do is, if you're sitting on, say, a chair or the edge of your bed or the sofa, something elevated, then this solid base of support that we establish consists of 3 points of contact. On a chair, it's our bottom and our feet. We want our feet to be flat on the floor. Our knees mostly together, not too tight, not too spread. So as a point of reference, we say shoulder width apart. If we are sitting on a meditation cushion or directly on the floor, then the 3 points of contact are our bottom and then our knees, with our legs folded in front of us. So we form a triangle or a tripod. Now, while we are establishing this solid base of support, we are also cultivating a relationship with our body and space. So it's to become aware of this body, to become aware of the messages and the information that it's constantly giving us. Be aware of the intricate interactions that must take place for this form to have existence. So when sitting, we notice our hips are slightly forward, our chin is in just a bit, that our ears are in line with our shoulder, our nose is in line with our navel, that our head is neither leaning to the left or right, neither forward nor backward. I notice when a lot of people come, and most of the people who come to retreats that I facilitate have no or little experience with sitting meditation. So what I notice is that when people are sitting, they sort of sit leaning a bit forward, their head down, which shows me they have no awareness of their body and space. So this form becomes important. It's the steps in cultivating a conscious awareness. When sitting, we sit in this tradition, which I'm ordained, we sit with our eyes mostly closed. For those of you who are not really interested in this tradition, it really doesn't matter, eyes open or eyes closed. In this tradition, we're taught to place the back of our left hand into the palm of our right and rest that on our thighs, with our thumb tips nearly touching. Nearly touching because when we become distracted from the essential point of sitting, our thumbs will communicate that to us by touching or in some other way moving. Again, if you're not interested in this tradition, then please just find a comfortable position for your hands. Some people put them palms on their thighs, some fold their hands on their stomach, some put their hands behind their back. It's to find a comfortable position that supports you in a steady, upright sitting posture. Then when sitting, we breathe in through the nose we breathe out through the mouth. When breathing in, we don't follow the breath into the body. Rather, we pay attention to the precise point where the breath enters the body. However, we don't cut the breath off at the diaphragm. Rather, we bring the breath down into the abdomen. You see, aware of our body and space will know we're doing that because our abdomen expands ever so slightly. Then when breathing out, we notice that our stomach contracts. We don't follow the breath out of the body, rather pay attention to the precise point where the breath leaves the body. Now, the point of sitting is not necessarily to stay connected with the breath, but in the effort to stay connected with the breath, be aware of how quickly the mind distracts us. Now, we'll sit together for this 10 cycles of breath. A cycle of breath is an in-breath followed by an out-breath. If you prefer, it's out-breath followed by an in-breath. We'll begin with my assistant, Vipka Kenshin Anderson, waking up the bell and helping it to sing 3 times. First song of the bell, our posture becomes immobile, save for the expansion and contraction of our stomach. The second and third songs of the bell support us in coming into an active relation with our breath. When we move from these 10 cycles of breath to the meditation practice of deep listening, Kenshin will wake up the bell and help it to sing twice. The first song of the bell, we bring our attention back to the space. Second song of the bell, if we need to move at that point, feel free to move. Any questions that you have about sitting, you can direct them to me. You can access me via email or, you can access me via email. My email address, it's anshin@zalto.org. But you can reach me at info@zalto.org, ZALTHO. I don't know, usually I would have this entered into the chat box. I don't know if there's some way I can communicate that to you, but I am accessible. I'm not hard to find, and you can ask any question of me that you like. Kenshin. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Yes, and bring your attention back to the space. And if you need to move, please feel free to move.
Yes, you're on. Okay.
Okay. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today. And it's interesting because I can't see you all. And I will say that having the opportunity to do a talk from a sitting is different for me. I'm used to having some ability to move around, and also to be able to interact with people. And that interaction takes place not always through conversation. The most powerful interactions take place visually. That I've been asked to address the topic of transformation, that as I am, the world becomes. What drew me to Buddhist practice? Some of you may know about my history, most of you probably don't. I was a combat soldier in the United States Army in Vietnam. I was a helicopter crew chief. I crewed slick ships. They carried troops and resupplies and did medical evacuations, and I crewed gunships. Their sole purpose was to blow things up. I was injured seriously in the war and spent a significant amount of time in the hospital. In the hospital, I was given narcotic medications for pain. I went through a number of surgeries. And when I was discharged from the military, I was discharged from the hospital and the military at the same time. My enlistment was up. They wanted me to stay longer. I didn't really want to stay. I was done. I didn't want to stay. However, I was discharged with a dependence on narcotics and a dependence on violence. My life followed a downward spiraling trajectory. And I didn't know that I had the possibility to live differently. The power of the mind. The mind creates the world that I think exists. That mind, that my ideas of things are shaped by the family generations that preceded me and by the collective conscious of which I'm a part of, the institutions of society, culture, entertainment, the ideas of religion. I didn't stand a chance of living differently until I was encouraged to stop taking intoxicants. Now, within the veteran community, something like 17 to 25 of us take our lives every day. I will unabashedly tell you that on the 13th of April, 1983, I was one of those statistics. However, I survived. I survived a massive overdose intact, not only physically, but mentally. That's not always a given. Subsequent to that, I was led to a drug rehabilitation center where I was introduced to the reality that if I didn't take intoxicants and I just didn't take them, my life could become something different. At that point, I simply followed instructions. I will say that in about 7 years into this process, I became acutely aware of how profoundly I had been affected by war. The reality of how I've been affected never goes away. I live with it constantly. However, I am able to discover how to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. What I think, what I believe, what I say is of little importance. How I live my life, how I interact with people, that is what is of importance. The roots of war, violence, and suffering. What I discovered is that the roots of war, violence, and suffering, they're here in me. So if I want the world to be different, then I have to live differently. Again, doesn't matter what I say, doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what I believe about things. It matters how I live my life. Right here, right now. As I am, the world becomes. If people express an interest to study or practice with me, then I start with 4 basic commitments. The first commitment, no intoxicants. No, none, not one. Now, if an individual is working with mental health issues and they are taking prescribed medications, then I want to talk to them about that. Within this community of veterans, former soldiers, this tribe that I belong to, I see that what I notice is that the vast majority of those people who end up taking their lives take their lives because they don't see the point. And most of them don't see the point because of the medications they're being given. They just don't feel anything anymore. That doesn't mean that I'm anti-medication. I know there's an efficacy that's very supportive for people. But I do want to have that conversation. And then I ask people to commit themselves to sitting twice a day, first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening, just like I described earlier. Then I ask them to look at their diet. No meat, no fish, no poultry. To not support institutions of killing. To not take anything for granted in their lives. And then to join a group of people like yourselves who are like-minded, not dogmatically glued together. And to practice with them. I was first introduced to, I understood meditation, or I thought I understood meditation. I studied and practiced martial arts for a number of years. I don't do that anymore. I stopped in '89. I haven't practiced kicks and punches since because, right, martial arts. If I want my life to be different, I have to do things different. Violence, under any circumstances, is not a solution. Even when it appears to work, it doesn't really work. So I was quite successful in the field of martial arts, and I just stopped doing everything. I just stopped. And it's through this stopping, letting go of my ideas of things, that suddenly I was able to live my life. I was begin to experience the possibilities of living life differently. I was in therapy with a social worker who recommended to me that I go to a Buddhist meditation retreat. I thought she was crazy. But because it was the only safe place I had, I did take the risk to go. But I made it incredibly difficult for the people sponsoring this retreat to allow me in. In fact, I did discover that they didn't want to let me come. I just told them the truth of how I was. The people who were fostering the retreat, who were leading the retreat, however, said, we don't turn anybody away. And so I went. For the first 3 days of that 5-day retreat, I wanted to leave every day. When I walked in, I saw these people hugging each other, and it just creeped me out. But I stayed. And there in that retreat, I began for the first time to talk about about my experiences in combat, how I was affected by that, or actually my experiences in combat, because I didn't really understand how I was affected by it. I couldn't get my mind around that. From there, I was invited to come to the monastery of the people who were facilitating that retreat. And they said to me at the end of that retreat, they said, come to our monastery, let us help you. We can help you. And I realized, and I burst into tears because I realized that no one in this country had ever said that to me. Not with any kind of sincerity. I was sort of overwhelmed. But I will say maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours after that invitation, my mind started telling me, look, you can't go there. The only reason they're inviting you is so that when you get there, they're going to take you as a prisoner, put you on trial for war crimes, and they're either going to execute you or keep you in prison. such is the power of the mind, the reality of ideas. I offered this, I expressed this kind of doubt to the social worker I was in therapy with, and that social worker rather assured me that this was probably not the case. But in my mind, it was incredibly and powerfully real. So I just kept doing the next thing. I realized that at a point that suddenly I started to receive mail. You see, this was back in 1990. This is before the cell phones and all of that, before they were like so handy. People started, and I opened these up and there were checks. People were sending me money so that I could get an airline ticket to go to this monastery, which was in Europe. At a point, I had enough money for a ticket. And then I had a critical decision to make. Do I actually go to this monastery, which I wasn't totally convinced that these people really wanted to help me? Or do I just take off, go to South America, go to the Caribbean or something? I made the choice to go to this monastery. The intention was to go for 30 days. I ended up staying 3 years. It was in this monastery that I began to experience the truth of an active meditation practice. It was in this monastery that I discovered the foundations that enable me to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. It was in, however, there came a time when this experience in this monastery just wasn't working for me anymore. The direction that this monastery was going was more about developing market share and carrying practice as I was experiencing it. And the people who were supportive to me were becoming more and more distant behind layers of bureaucracy. And so I made the choice to leave that monastery, come back to the US. I was living in Massachusetts. I was at the health food store, and I was approached by someone who said to me, the person said to me, "Oh, are you Claude Thomas?" My first reaction was, "Oh, wait a minute. I don't know." Because my experience with people looking for me in the past wasn't a good one. I said yes, and they invited me to come to Naropa University in Colorado to do a talk there, to spend a week there in their summer program. I went there, and there I met the person whom I'm ordained by. Their monastery was in Yonkers, New York. So it was just a short drive for me, 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. Depends on how closely I followed the speed limit. The first time, the second time that I went to this the first time I went to this monastery, they showed me all their bells and whistles and all the stuff that was going on, and I was still pretty rough, edgy. I then asked to come back again. I said, "You showed me all your stuff. Now I really want to sit down and talk with you." So then I was invited back. I came back. And in those days, when I was anxious or a bit nervous, I had a tendency to talk very fast and too much. So I was rambling on, and the abbot of that monastery stopped me and said, "How about we sit together? How about we just sit together for a few minutes? 10 cycles of breath." And so I said, "Well, okay." Yeah. And we sat together for 10 cycles of breath. And then when we finished, or we transitioned out of that, he looked at me and said, "I want to ordain you." And this is the second time I met this person. And I said, "Ordain me." I said, "What in the F do you want with me?" And they said to me, "Nothing. I just want you to keep practicing meditation and do what you do." It was the right thing to say at that time. It wasn't entirely true. And it was just by taking the next step, that my life began to unfold in front of me. That I was being presented with opportunities I could never in my life ever have imagined before. And I was discovering how to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. I was living at this monastery in Yonkers, and it was on the 4th of July. And Yonkers is not where the monastery was located, was just up the hill from the Hudson River. So you could, and they started a fireworks display off the Hudson River. And I was thrust into an immediate flashback. And for me, the bombs were going off all around me. I could hear gunfire in the background. And what I did is I retreated onto the front porch of one of the houses, and I had to go inside because I sort of knew what I was experiencing and seeing wasn't authentic, it wasn't real, but it was very real. That's the nature of a flashback. It is the actual reliving of an experience. So I had these coexisting realities. And however, this practice of breath awareness, paying attention to what was right in front of me, opening a door consciously, seeing myself pass through that door consciously, watching that door close consciously, and then doing the next thing, that enabled me to stay steady in the midst of this turmoil that I was experiencing. So my initial sort of passage into practice, into meditation practice, so an active meditation practice, really brought me in contact with all that suffering that had remained hidden, blocked from view by my intellect, by the notion that I just didn't want to experience this stuff. I just wanted it to go away. Well, it never goes away. It just doesn't go away. And so it's been through this practice that I've learned that I'm continually learning and discovering how to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. There are still moments when I hate myself. I mean, I really hate myself. The things that I've witnessed, the things that we experience in war, the war before the war, my childhood, the war, and the war after the war. I live with those things, and I'm thankful that I have a conscious access to the majority of them, because they really support me. They give me access to a truth of existence that I never knew before existed. The world, I don't have to think my way through things. The world is constantly informing me about what to do next, how to be, what to say. I'm just ever so thankful that I have the opportunity to be alive and to be present in this moment. My father died at the age of 53. No adult male member of the patriarchal lineage of my family lived past my father's age. This past birthday, which was in November, I turned 76. I've outlived my father by 23 years. And my plan is to make it to like 800. I don't know if that's possible, but what the heck. But to really care for myself, as I care for myself, I have the capacity and the ability to know how to care for others. I lived homeless for 2 years. I lived in an abandoned car in an alleyway between 6th and Liberty Streets in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I lived outside 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When the social workers would come, when the weather would get cold or routinely they would come out, I hid. I hid because I didn't want to engage with them. I didn't want to engage with them because they did not want to listen to me. They had ideas of how I was supposed to be and were trying to force their ideas of their agenda on me. In therapy, I was very unfortunate by the 2 people who supported me, because they refused to give me a diagnosis. They refused. They supported me in this process of awakening, which is not an easy one or a simple way. As I said before, I think I can't think myself into a new way of living. I have to live myself and to a new way of thinking. I'm eternally grateful for the invitation to address this community, to introduce myself to you. I'm very thankful for Frederick, who initiated this, and for Reverend Nika. I wonder if that's short for Nicola. Anyway, for Reverend Nika, for the work that she does in hosting and supporting your community. If there is anything that I can do, or the Zalto Foundation can do to support you on your path, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are actively involved in the larger community, in a world community. I'm invited into war zones. I go actively into war zones, into mental institutions, into locked psychiatric facilities, into prisons. And I carry the reality that if we want the world to be different, it can be if we're willing to live differently. And we can't think ourselves into that. It is a disciplined spiritual practice that enables us to become present to what keeps us trapped in repeated cycles of suffering and gives us the opportunity to experience what the world has in store for us. There are 2 books I've had the privilege to have published. One, Reverend Nika read from. The other one is At Hell's Gate, A Soldier's Journey from War to Peace. One's available on Shambhala, the other is available through Oakwood Books. You can find them online. Just now, I've said enough, so I'll be quiet. I bow to all of you. I bow to all of you. In a Zoom fashion, we do online meditation every Thursday and Saturday here at the Magnolia Zen Center. We do it online. We've done it since the onset of the more extreme onset of COVID. And every Sunday at 11 a.m. Central Time, I'm in Central Time, we do an open session of questions and responses. You're welcome to come. And at 6 p.m. Central Time, there's a group, a veterans group that we meet, predominantly combat veterans. If you want more information about that, you can find us. Zalto, Z-A-L-T-H-O. You can find us online. All you have to do an internet search. I refuse to use the G word. I'd rather just say internet search. Anyway, I offer up a big hug to all of you. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.